I'm Chris.
And I'm Kiley. And this is Redefining Resilience,
where we explore what it means to build a resilient lifestyle
so you can thrive in any and every situation. Well, welcome, Tommy.
We're here. Hello.
So Tommy and I go way back. Tommy and I worked together at a sales coaching firm, and Tommy started his own venture. And I'll have you, Tommy, share a little bit more about your story, but you have a really cool career history, and what you're doing now is really awesome, and we're excited to partner up with you and have you on this podcast to talk about your resilience journey, because it's one that I think is pretty unique. We all have a unique story, but yours is pretty cool, Tommy. So welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Happy to be here.
Good. Well, first, just tell us a little bit about you. Background, personal, professional life.
Yeah, so had a pretty unique dream when I was in sixth grade. I was a hothead in basketball and led the league in technicals. And for some reason, I decided, you know what, I want to be a referee one day when I grow up. And that stemmed from getting technicals, having referees come over and talk to me, never appreciated or liked what they said, but appreciated that they took the time to come and talk to me. So I'm like, that's really cool. One day I want to do that. And it wasn't just one interaction. It was probably over the course of the entire season. So fast forward, started refereeing in sixth grade, like little kids games at my grade school. And after my freshman year at Dayton, came home and started refereeing high school, little kids. And just like anything else, I just started asking questions like, NBA was the dream. How do I get there? How do I get to college? How do I get to the NBA? Did that for almost 20 years, which is wild to think. Always had, I tell people it was the coolest six-figure hobby at the level that I got. So always had another career simultaneously with officiating, but that took up a lot of time. And then 2020 decided to retire, not because of COVID, just started having kids and family and priorities were out of whack. And
so what was the travel schedule like when you were refereeing and in the thick of it?
Insane. I think my last season, first game was like Monday or Tuesday, the first week in November, was on the road until the day after Thanksgiving, came home for one day, back on the road till December 9th. That was pretty much December as well. And then January and February was usually Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday games, back home on either Sunday night or Monday, and then repeat on Wednesday. So probably 60, 65 games in a 4-month span. So it was a lot. It was intense.
That's rocking and rolling.
Yeah. And you're trying to manage a full-time career.
That's right.
In the professional world.
Yeah. So we were never in a city more than 24 hours. So everything was like in and out. Still to this day, amazing because we booked our own travel that I never ended up in the wrong city. Always showed up in the right city. Thank God. So that was in and of itself a pretty miraculous feat over 20 years doing that.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So every referee booked their own?
So in college, yeah. So we're independent contractors. So once you get to NBA, NFL, they do all that for you, but we're 1099 in college. So yeah, we book our own travel, own hotel, own rental car, everything. We did it all. So I used to joke when people ask, what do you do? I said I was a babysitter and a part-time travel agent.
Yeah.
But it was really, I refereed college basketball because you are babysitting 18 to 22-year-olds.
Oh, yeah. How many people didn't show up on time or went to the wrong city?
Not as many as you'd think. We had to get there an hour and a half before the game. So like today I was here an hour before we started recording this. Just ain't all about being on time now. About everything. It drives my wife nuts, but that's led into every part of my life. So it happened, but we had to be there an hour and a half before the game. So someone being late would be like an hour before the game, not right when the game's going to start. But it did happen from time to time. Not with me, but with others.
Losers.
I'm not mentioning names.
Okay, so segue into you make this transition into full-time professional career. What was that transition like?
going from officiating to starting my own company.
Yeah.
Wild, because I'd done that longer than I'd done anything else, longer than I'd gone to school, longer than I've known my wife, longer. I mean, that was the longest thing I've ever done. And that was my identity. So, you know, I'd always heard about people who, whether it would be athletes or whoever, who retire and they talk about, they feel this disconnect. And I never knew what that meant until I retired. And it probably took me up until this year, or maybe end of last year, to really separate myself and not identify anymore as an official. So it was a struggle, because that's who I thought I was. I thought I was an official, and that's not who I was. It was just something that I did. So it took a while, and it was a struggle. And I can definitely appreciate when people are going through that now, because I lived that.
That's awesome. What was it like going off on your own and starting your own business?
Oh man, it was everything. Fun, scared, glad, mad, kind of the whole range of emotions. But it's one of those things, and you and I've talked about it. I'd rather fail, and going into failure is a whole nother podcast episode, but like, to me, I would rather take away learning lessons that it didn't succeed on my own than go and be successful for somebody else. And I think that was always just kind of in my DNA growing up. And I basically had to do that through officiating for almost 2 decades. So it was like, let's just figure this out. And if it doesn't work out, now I've got learning lessons that I can take back into the corporate world, if that's where it took me, or if that's where I ended up.
That's so true. And you might not know this, but when you and I talked back when I was still working for someone else, and you told me about what it was like to be your own boss, that conversation was the pivotal conversation that helped me make the choice to go off on my own. That gave me the confidence, like, if Tommy can do it, surely I can follow in those footsteps.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Look at what you created, man.
If Tommy messed it up, I could do a lot better than this.
It's like a backhanded compliment. I
Yeah,
get those
I
all the
guess. I'll
time.
take
She's
it.
really good at those.
I'll take it.
No. He just showed me what was possible. And you made it so simple. You're like, you don't need to have everything perfect. You're like, just go off, do it on your own. You don't have to have like everything ready A to Z. Just go do what you know how to do best, and everything will fall in line. And it was the confidence that I needed to take the leap.
Yeah, look, the way I did it, I wouldn't recommend. Like, I didn't have any clients lined up when I jumped. It was a bit of the unknown. I mean, it was truly like betting on myself, burn the boats, like going all in. Would business schools recommend that? Probably not. Would mentors? Probably not. But I think, like, when your back's up against the wall, you find out how resourceful you are, and you can find out just, hey, I don't have another option. I mean, you do, but you don't. And then the thing that was finally the hurdle for me that allowed me to make the jump was, I thought back to all the coaches that I had hired since I was out of school. And I was worried about, well, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have, to your point, A to Z lined up. And I thought back to every professional relationship with a coach, and they never gave me a syllabus like in school. They never gave me something like, here's the next 12 months of what we're going to do. And that really resonated with me, of like, maybe they didn't have it figured out. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But then that was what I needed to say, like, I don't have to have this figured out, because there's a good chance that they didn't have it figured out, but they just were going to go along with it. So for me, it was just thinking back to all those relationships. I've probably had 4 or 5 coaches, and then it was like, all right, they never really had it figured out. And if they did, they didn't really make it feel that way.
Yeah.
And not from a bad sense, but then it was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to take the plunge. And I always share with people, like, at some point, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, it's not about having it figured out. It's just having the confidence that you don't have to have it figured out, like on day one. I used to tell officials all the time, I'm going to jump right in here. People are always like, what makes the best official? And there's a lot of things that can go into it. But my belief is your ability to overcome little losses. And what I mean, like in a game, it's a missed call, a bad call, your partner makes a call and you don't keep a poker face. You have a bad interaction with a coach, a heated conversation. You have a conversation with a player that doesn't go right. But your ability to overcome, I had a mentor, and I'll change the words for the podcast, but it was, don't mess up a mess up with another mess up. right? So your ability to just overcome little losses quickly.
Oh, we cuss on this podcast.
Okay, don't fuck up a fuck up with another fuck up is how my mentor said it to me.
That one's better.
There you go.
We're just digging a bigger hole.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then and there's so much just about that mistakes and what you tell yourself, and mistakes are a lie because it's just one little occurrence in a bigger scheme. But if you tell yourself that's what always happens, you're just going to go down a rabbit hole. So for me, it was like just the ability to overcome little losses. And it happens still in entrepreneurship. It's like something doesn't go right. Okay, that's not who I am. That's not what I am. That's just what happened today. And it's an isolated incident. It's not forever. It's temporary. Let's move past it.
Yeah, I think about as a business owner, or really anybody who wants to be a successful human, you have to have a good relationship with failure and be okay with it, because you don't learn from the successes. You learn from the fuck ups.
Well, it's just data. Everything we do is data. So your failure is just, hey, listen, that data point, following that road ended me or put me here. Let's just not do that again. Just reverse it a little bit and go a different way. Little brother's starting to talk about opening a beef jerky store, which I am so jazzed about. I can't even see straight. I'm so pumped for him. It's called Bevo's Jerky, which is awesome. And we were talking about it today, and he was a little bit nervous. He's like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know about that. I'm like, well, what do you know? And he listed all these things, and I'm like, you know a lot, bud. Like, you know a whole lot. So that stuff is created problems that you don't have to face yet. You're talking about websites and online orders and stuff, and you don't even have a fucking website. You have no online orders right now to worry about. So don't create problems that don't exist.
You know, I appreciate you sharing that, because I was talking to a client a couple of weeks ago, and I'm a visual person, so I'd never really written this out or drawn this out. And it just kind of happened by accident. And I'm fortunate that I have, you know, my first career that I went through in officiating, right? And I was drawn very elementary up on a whiteboard, and I was like, you know, day one when I started at 18, and then day how many thousands of days when I finished 17 years later. Not once, right? Now I do this in entrepreneurship, but I'm quick to come back to this example. But not once in officiating when I started was I like, man, what am I going to do in year 10 and trying to get into Division I? Like never once thought about that. And it was probably because I was naive and didn't know any better. But literally every single day was like, how do I get a little bit better? And ask somebody who's where I want to get to, like a question, and what's a learning that, because failure is nothing more than feedback, to your point. It's just data. Yeah. It's what you do with it that matters. It's going to happen, but what do you do with it? And so I look back at this and I'm like, wow, that's incredible, because I never asked that. And so it's like when I catch myself like getting worried about a website or social media or something, I'm like, hold on. Yeah. That never once entered my mind. When I was an official, it was just like, literally, how do I get a little bit better today? And if that stays my focus, like that's going to help me far better than, man, I wonder what I have to do 3 years from now or 5 years from now, or building a new speaker packet or change it. Like none of that matters. It's just do a little something today, and then that stuff will take care of itself.
Well, because you're just not presented with a problem yet. If you're not presented with a problem, it's useless energy.
And most of the problems are self-created anyway. They're not
exactly.
Real.
If you're 1% better every day, you're 365% better every year. So the problems you're going to be faced with at a 365% increase in productivity will be completely different. Worry about that when you're there.
Yeah. I just posted this on LinkedIn, I think yesterday. What's the next right step of integrity? That's all business owners typically are asking themselves each day. We have a game plan, we have a strategic plan or a vision, and we don't necessarily know how we're going to get there, but if you ask yourself every day, what's the next right step of integrity, you're going to inevitably make progress towards that vision or that goal. And I just think about, like, if you stay focused on that, you're not going to ever get derailed. And when you do get derailed, you ask yourself, again, what's the next right step of integrity? It's pretty simple. It doesn't have to get overcomplicated. And to your point, I think we make up the complications in our head.
That's when it's outside the framework. So you built a framework for yourself with officiating. Like, your talent base, how to communicate. You learned all of this information, and you built a framework. It's just like the gym, built a framework of capability, and you just function inside said framework. And when you're pressing the envelope and creating more things, your framework is getting larger. So when you're starting a business, which cracks me up, you've probably heard this 1,000 times too. Well, what about, like we're saying, 10 years from now when I'm presented with this problem? So your framework is not even remotely close to dealing with that problem yet, bud. So, yeah, essentially stay in your lane for your first year of business.
Yeah.
You're a newbie. That's okay.
Yeah.
So one thing about Tommy that I know to be true, you seek out hard things, like voluntarily.
I mean, anyone that runs up and down a basketball court for 2 hours a night, you've got some screws loose in the head to get yelled at. And I mean, 50% of the people hate you a little bit less than the other 50%. So yeah, there's definitely some things wrong upstairs with me.
I agree. So I remember very distinctly us being in the office a few years ago and you being like, oh, I'm going to do 75 hard. And I'm like, okay, what exactly does that entail? And you're like, oh, just sticking to a diet, working out every day, twice a day, no alcohol, and reading 10 pages a day. And you were like, I pretty much do all that already. And I'm like, what? I was like, first off, my birthday's coming up. There's no way I could give up alcohol because he's trying to talk me into doing it with him. And I was like, absolutely not, hard pass. And I was like, there's no way I could not drink alcohol on my birthday. And I distinctly remember this. And I'm like, man, Tommy was on to something a long time ago because you seek out hard things. And fast forward, like I've given up alcohol and I haven't drank in like 3 years. So I can do that actually. But I look at that like 75 hard, or you've done quite a few other big challenges that I'm not sure most people would ever consider taking on. And one is the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest. So tell us a little bit about what the heck that was and like, why did you do it?
Yeah. And I totally forgot about that. For context too, in officiating for 17, 18 years, I always had a start date to get ready for, right? To an off season, if you will, to prepare mentally, physically, emotionally. And one of the things I realized a couple years after retiring, I'm like, man, I don't have anything on the calendar to get ready for. And that was really eating at me of like, man, I need something on the calendar. I need something that I can train for, I can get ready for, right? And so...
Also, hold on. I got to quickly mention the fact that you did a marathon.
Oh, yeah, I did that right before.
Yeah, without training.
No, there was like, I ran for a couple weeks.
Yeah, okay.
It's just because
most people train for a marathon for like months or a year.
But it wasn't for me. I had breakfast with a friend, and he was like, I signed up for my first marathon. I'm like, awesome, who are you doing it with? And he's like, solo. And I remember like going in the car, I'm like, dude, nobody should do their first marathon alone. That he's going to go into some dark places mentally. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't even tell him. I just signed up and then took a screenshot, and I'm like, hey, I signed up. I got 2 rules. Once you start, you're going to finish, and you're not going to say anything negative out loud, and I'll make sure you finish, whether it takes us 5 hours or 15, and they close the course, like, you will run 26.2, walk, crawl, or I'll drag you. I don't care, but you're going to finish. And he was like, what's wrong with you? That's in like 3 weeks. And I'm like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out on this podcast right now.
It's all mental.
Okay. So
I'm totally on the same page with you.
It's all mental.
So you just have to make the decision that it's possible, and you'll do it.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Body follows the mind.
That's right.
Not vice versa.
I hope I come out of this room alive with you psychos.
Yeah.
You'll just come out better.
Yeah, that's right. You'll learn something.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're not even charging you for this.
Wow, thanks.
So I think you asked about the mountain. The mountain. So it's called 29029. And for those of you that aren't aware, it's an endurance event that Jesse Itzler, Colin O'Brady, forget the other co-founder's name. Anyway, Colin's done some crazy, he owns like 10 Explorer records all over the world. And he and Jesse wanted to start an event where people could climb the equivalent of Mount Everest without having to go to the real Mount Everest. And so the time starts on Friday at 6 a.m. and you have until 6 p.m. on Saturday to finish. It's 36 hours and it's just you and the mountain. Whereas a marathon, you've got, 150 different turns and you're going through cities and all this stuff. But this mountain is just you and the mountain. And it's the same course, same trek. And every time you toe the start line, like, just go get it. And I really like that because it's a great community event. Like, it's not a race. They're very particular in that it's an event and a community feel. And I asked one of the guys once, I'm like, I was just curious, what's the completion rate? And he's like, it's somewhere around like 50, 60%. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is, because I think a marathon is like 95% completion. I'm like, I got to find something that's like a little bit tougher, right? Like do something a little bit harder. So yeah, you start at 6 a.m. and the place that I did it was in Snow Basin, Utah, which is just north of Salt Lake. And I tell people sometimes, so from the base to the summit was 2.3 miles, so 13 summits. So you hike up and then you take a gondola down, which is like a 10-minute ride. And at some points, the incline was 35%. So for those of you listening, next time you're on a treadmill, and if you like treadmills, there's something wrong with you. But if you're on a treadmill, set it to 12% and imagine it 3 times as steep. And that's how steep it was at certain points on the mountain. I was with one other guy and we met another guy there, and I had 3 rules there. I said, every time we get to the top and ride down, we're going to say one thing that we're grateful for. Number 2, we're not allowed to say anything negative out loud. And number 3, you're allowed to quit, but only when it's over. Like, we're not quitting in the middle. We'll figure this out. And it was one of the most profound, like, I'll be able to look back at that event in my life, and there will be others since then and hopefully in the future. But like, I left that place a different person. Yeah. And I tell people it was the hardest thing physically I've ever done, and it was only 10% physical. Because the only way you know when someone finishes, like the trophy or the medal, is a red hat. It's the only piece of apparel in the whole company that is red. Can't buy it. You have to earn it. And you see all these people that are jacked and ripped afterwards, and they don't have a red hat. And then you see some people who are clearly, by the definition of obese, they are obese with a red hat. And you're like, that tells you all you need to know right there. Yeah. It is 100, not 100%. There is some physical components, but it's 90% mental. And yeah, I mean, there was some dark conversation. I mean, I'll just get into it if you want. So I created there was like a physical training plan going into it, but I created a 2-page mental game plan that I distributed to the guys. And one of the things I always ask officials or entrepreneurs or anybody, I'm like, why are you surprised? Right? Like, adversity is coming at some point. Like, it's going to come. So don't be surprised. And I always ask people, why are you surprised? And I told the guys, like, there's going to be times, there's going to be dark conversations, right? And I coach this, I consult, like, I knew it was coming. And so do the first like 6 or 7, like, feeling pretty good. It's towards the end of the night. Now here comes this thunderstorm, rainstorm, lightning storm. They pull us off the course and they don't stop the clock. So the clock's still going. So about an hour, 45 degrees, rain, cold, wet, just pull us off the side of the mountain. So we're there for about an hour, and then we start climbing again, get to the top. Now the gondola's broke. Oh, and I told the 2 guys I was with before we go in there, I said, we're all going through shit, but it's the story we tell ourselves that's going to separate. So the first time that we hear someone talk negative, like, this isn't fair, they need to stop the clock, they need to advance, I said, we're moving. Because you can either look at this as woe is me and have a victim mentality, or you can say, this is a chance for us to dry off. This is a chance for us to get off our feet. This is a chance for us to put on those. You ever seen those, like, I call them aluminum foil blankets? Yeah. Those things actually work. I've always like made fun of those things. Those things work because they had those up there. And it was, so I'm like, this is what this is. It's a chance to rehydrate, refuel, get off our feet, get dry. It's not woe is me. And the first time we hear it, we're leaving. Like, we are moving in the lodge. So we're there for 2 hours. So, you know, you got 3 hours of adversity. So, and then so we ride down. Now it's like 11 o'clock and those guys are like, hey, we want to do one more. And I'm like, I'm a morning person. I'm like, let me just get off my feet. They had tents for us. I'm like, let me just get off my feet. You guys go do another one. I'll get up at 4. I'll crank out one on my own. We'll meet at breakfast at 7 and then we'll finish the last 4. But I'm beat. I just need to get off my feet. So they start off on another one. I go in the tent and here comes another lightning storm and I'm not able to sleep a wink. So I set my alarm on my phone for 3:30. And alarm goes off 3:30. Now here comes the dark conversation. And this goes on for like 30 minutes. Like, why do you think you're going to finish this? Have fun telling all your friends and family and clients that you didn't finish. This is only a 50% success rate. Like, what makes you think you're in the right half of the 50 and not the wrong? Like 30 minutes, like bad stuff. Like, I knew it was coming and it was bad. And there was one question that it just stopped everything. And I think this goes to, like, when your why is deep enough and you have a big enough why, like, you'll figure out the how. And it was like, with 2 young girls at home, like, are you okay at some point in the future, having a conversation with them and telling them when life gets hard, you can tap out. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not having that conversation.
Amen.
Like I'll let the time expire and not finish before I just stay in the tent and not finish what I came here to do. And so I'm like, if you don't want to have that conversation, get up and finish what you started. Because if you want to have that conversation, stay in the warm bed, all snuggled up with layers on in a stocking hat and everything. And I'm like, no, I'm not having that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, no chance I'm having that conversation. So I got up and I'm so grateful because that solo climb at 4 a.m, like you just talk about like a spiritual, like it was like, when else am I going to be on the side of a mountain in the middle of Utah at 4 a.m. in the morning? Like you have to wear a headlamp and check in at the bottom and the top. But there was times I just turned it off and I'm like, I mean, this is amazing. Yeah. Like this is unbelievable. And so I'm so glad I got to experience that solo one. And it's cliche, but you know, the darkest part of the day is right before the light. Right?
It has to get hard.
It has to.
In order to kill the previous version of yourself.
You have to.
It will never happen in the ease. That's why I absolutely fell in love with difficult things.
You have to.
Because you cannot progress unless you find failure.
Well,
and then you can't. I love it.
That's the hero's journey.
And the thing it actually like taught me, like one of the like unintended learnings from that was like going through that, it made me realize that like the default status for humans is like safety and comfort. So when you see someone who's not willing to do hard things, like don't get upset with them. Like don't give them a hard time because they're just being average and that's okay. But that's like the default status that we all want to stay in. That's the cocoon that's safe and warm and nobody's going to get upset with you. You're not going to get any haters just being average. Like, but that's so don't get upset with people. Like that's one of my biggest takeaways from that experience is like, that's where humans live, literally and figuratively. Like just be excited when somebody is dumb enough to go climb a mountain for 36 hours. Like, awesome. What can I learn from you? Like, I want to be around those people, but don't get mad at people that just want to stay in their bubble because that's nature. That's safe. That's natural. And so I think that's really like changed my perspective. When I used to like challenge people, like I'm like next, like I don't have time for people that stay safe. Like I need to be around people that push themselves, push me, challenge themselves. Like that's my tribe. So the faster I can find those people, we can grow together. But I just don't get upset with people who don't want to push themselves because I've realized now that that's the natural state. So finished, put a bow on the story, did that last climb or the climb at 4 a.m, met the 2 other guys, told them my crazy story. They got pulled off the mountain at like midnight or 1 a.m. for another lightning storm. They finished, I don't think they got back to the tent until like 2 a.m. or something. Then we finished 4 and I mean, I'd say getting married, having 2 kids, and then finishing that was like, I was crying when I finished. Yeah. Like it was an emotional experience, like just knowing like what I put into that physically training, but just mentally too. And to your point, like that version of me died on that mountain and a different person came. And I tell people too, like, yeah, I got the red hat and I think I've worn the red hat like 3 times, like flying home and 2 times to speak, but the trophy wasn't what that was about, right? Like it's who I became on the other side. It wasn't the status or what I was chasing. It was like who I became as someone that went through that. That's way more important of who I became than what I got physically. Like that pales in comparison to what I actually got, which 1, you can't buy. You have to go get it. You have to earn it. And 2, you're only going to get that by doing something hard. That doesn't come just by doing something easy.
I think that's the misstep I hear from a lot of people. They're like, well, why would you do this? You only get a silly ass trophy or a silly ass red hat. I'll just go buy a fucking red hat. So that's not the point, bud. I don't punish myself and refine myself through fire and pain and hard things because I want a silly charm necklace that I get. The last one I got was absolute garbage. Yeah. It was like from the dollar store. It barely fit over my huge head.
It's true.
Like it, but I learned from the process and became a better person. It's really sad that there are humans on this planet that have never felt that feeling. What is the man in the arena? Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. What's the last line? You'd never be reduced to those cold and timid souls that never tested themselves or something like that. Cold and timid souls on the outside of the arena. Like, I really believe those are cold and timid souls, the ones that want to be safe. Safe is easy. Safe literally means don't do anything and you've won. But what a life.
Yeah.
You know?
Amen.
Well, and I think the mental fortitude that was required for you to complete that is now the sturdy foundation you have for every other hard situation that you face in the day-to-day.
Yeah, and
because it'll never be that hard.
Yeah, and as I look back too, like I got that 60 nights a year from college basketball, like how to be decisive, how to be in an arena with 15,000 idiots, sorry, you call them fans, screaming at you, 2 multi-millionaire crybabies that are always bitching about something, 10 players who are, don't get me started about them, entitled, whatever. But like you put yourself in that environment night after night, like you're either going to get better or you're going to phase out. Like because you have to get better in that environment. Like and so when I stripped that away, I realized like, man, I'm really missing like this night in and night out challenge mentally of just having, really what officiating at that level taught me was like having the intestinal fortitude to know like what I need to do. But as soon as I put air in this whistle, like all the attention's coming on me and I know it's the right call, but like everyone in here is just going to go lose their absolute mind.
Yeah.
But knowing that in the split second, like that's the right decision and I'm about to do it and everything's going to stop and everyone's going to look at me, but I know that's the right thing to do. That's what I really like crave. And like people ask me all the time, do I miss officiating? No, I miss that. Like it was funny. I've only been to like 2 or 3 games since I retired and I went this year and it was hard for me to like put words on like what I missed. And I was at Butler and I went with a friend who had floor seats on the baseline. And I give context there was a call really late in the game and a friend of mine was actually reffing and made the call and like the whole arena is like going nuts. And it was like right into a media timeout. And I literally got up and walked over to him. And I'm like, people ask me all the time, like the last 4 years, do you miss it? And I couldn't put words on. I was like, this is what I miss. That's like right there, that moment, like that's what I missed. Making a call and like 9,000 people are just losing their minds. That's what I missed. And that's like a sick thing to say, but like that's the thing I was missing was like being in that environment to like test the mental fortitude of like doing what's right when it's needed, knowing that everybody is going to like be upset with your decision. And I'm like, that's what I missed. And I couldn't put words on it until I like saw it in person and I'm like, that's what I missed. And like, so going to climb a mountain is like the closest thing I could find to run up and down a basketball court.
So what do they say integrity is? Doing the right thing when no one's watching?
Yeah.
It's like the greatest representation of integrity because everybody's watching and you're getting instant feedback from everybody. Yeah, that's intense.
Wild.
I don't think I can handle it if 9,000 people screamed at me at once.
Well, no other profession in the world do you have 10,000, 20,000 experts at your job that are the minute you make it, like Bob the accountant, like nobody's standing over his shoulder when he makes an edit on some Excel spreadsheet, like going wild in it. Like think about that. There's no other profession, maybe police officers, maybe, right?
President of the United States.
Yeah, well, okay. But you think about like everybody's an expert.
Yeah.
And the minute you make a decision, it's not only there, but on TV, like hundreds of thousands of people watching at home and rewinding every decision you make. Like pretty wild to think about everybody's an expert at your job and haven't done it once in their life.
That's why I can't watch sports. So I get super hella frustrated whenever we're sitting at we have Pizza Fridays every night at
we did that with you.
Pat Dan's.
Yeah.
And these people will sit in this room and chastise every player, every ref, every decision. I'm like, bro, you're 5'2", 350 pounds. You could not do shit on that court.
You couldn't make it up the court one time.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're chastising that 6'10" awesome athlete? Like, go fuck yourself, bud. What are you doing, man?
People are wild. Sports brings out
the crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And then they have like this long dialogue of like every analytical theme possible. Did you know he came from XYZ? And
I thought they were sports analysts.
What is your deal, bud?
It's hard. It drives my, like, if it were up to me, I wouldn't have the sound on for games. Like, it's really hard for me to watch games in general, just because of how I watched games and film for so many years. But like, I just prefer not to have the announcers on, because they're just as dumb as the fans. There's like a handful that actually like know the rules and can appreciate the game at a high level. Most of them are just clowns.
Well, I think they're just looking for views.
Yeah,
I mean, they can just stir the pot and make it worse. Yeah.
At least if you're doing that, own it, and I'm good with it. But don't act like you're like an expert and you know what you're talking about when you don't.
Yeah, I can't do it, man.
Yeah.
I had a guy yell at me one time over UK basketball. A vein was popping out of his forehead because I said I don't watch sports, and he's like, "What? How could you not watch UK basketball?"
Yeah.
Like, did you go to UK? Well, no.
No.
Did you play basketball? Well, no. Then shut up.
Yeah.
Like, I know literally as much as you do. Like, stop.
It's funny how people, mostly males in the U.S. in a certain probably like 20 to 50 demographic, like that drives their life.
I have a theory behind
whether
that,
it's fantasy. I want to hear this, because whether it's fantasy or fantasy sports or like a team, like they care about more about a team's winning and losing than like their own life. And then like that outcome will affect them for days.
Oh, yeah.
Days.
If not years.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about.
Yeah.
I've never, like, fan is short for fanatic for sure, but it's like, I just don't, like, maybe because I come from such a different world, I just don't know how that could let you, how sports could affect your life so much. Like, I get it if like you own the team, cool. Yeah. I'm good with you like being pissed off. Outside of like that affecting your livelihood, like a coach or a player or an owner, I don't get it.
It absolutely boggles my mind. But
so weird.
Yeah.
People are allowed to be passionate, I guess.
Be passionate about something that matters.
One day we'll get into my theory behind it.
Yeah, we'll take that offline. Okay, Tommy, going back to the mountain, I want to know, you wrote a book about the experience.
I did. Was there a question, or are you just gonna?
I want to know.
just kind of.
Well, I needed to make sure you were paying attention to me. You're awfully fidgety, so
I just get fired up. Excited to talk.
The hat turned backwards and everything.
I'm ready to go now.
He's fired up.
Just turned into a machine.
You got him all riled up.
Let's go. You got me talking about idiot fans. Now I'm really ready to go.
When the referee fights back. So you wrote this book. I want to know what were the key takeaways that you wrote about in this book?
So yeah, related in the book is a children's book about the experience of climbing the mountain. Never my intention. It was coming home, debriefing, having all these notes and just writing. And I had a couple of speeches lined up after I came home, and I knew inevitably like there's no way I'm not going to talk about this. So just being overly prepared, I'm like, I better come up with 2 or 3 takeaways, because inevitably somebody in the Q&A is going to be like, hey, unbelievable story that you shared. Appreciate you sharing that. What were some of the takeaways? So I started writing my takeaways down, and I ended up having 8. And I was like, oh, that would have been cool if this, what is it called? An
acronym.
An acronym. Yes. I went to Dayton, so bear with me.
We'll forgive you. It's Ohio.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, that would have been cool if it like spelled something. And back when I had a phone, I actually had to Google how many letters were in mountain, because it was just a jumbled mess. I'm like, oh, this would have been cool. How many letters are in mountain? Oh, there's 8. Oh, that's cool. I have 8. Oh man, that's too bad. And then I look down and I'm like, oh, if I rearrange these, I'm like, that's brilliant. It's mountain, overcoming any mountain. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to like write an adult book. Who has time for that? Which is kind of funny. Fast forward 2 years.
That's a lot of pages.
Yeah, that's a lot of writing.
Pictures in there.
Yeah. I was like, but one of my favorite things as a dad is story time at bed, like bedtime, right? And now with a 4-year-old, like she's starting to like understand it. So I'm like, they're not going to understand what I did for like 20 years, 15 years. I'm like, all right, I'll just literally, it wasn't even to like sell a book, and it's still not about that. It was like, I just want to make a book for them. If someone else buys it, awesome. Don't care. I want to make a book about them, for them. And so the book is about 2 girls. I use their middle names, Caroline and Grace, that want to climb a mountain. Their friends tell them it's going to be impossible. It's too hard. It's too big. You can't do it. Yada, yada, yada. Similar to what I heard before going out there. And they go to their dad, and their dad says, I did this when I was your age. Here's the plan. And the plan is my 8 takeaways, which I'm sure we'll get into. And it was awesome. Like the joy of, and you'll appreciate this, Chris, being a girl dad, like the joy of, because I told them about a month before the book came out, because I was working back and forth with the illustrator. So I was printing off every day, like the edits and the pictures. And so they thought that was cool in and of itself. But when we got the prototype from Amazon in the mail, and seeing that, like my 2-year-old was like, she didn't care, but like seeing my 4-year-old's like reaction of like seeing herself in the book,
Yeah.
and like that coming, like that was cooler than like any speech I'll give, any game like the pure joy on her face of seeing herself in a book, and like now telling her friends that she has a book, like that is the coolest thing. And she has memorized literally every word now. So like that, just that moment will be etched in my mind forever. And that was worth climbing the mountain for 33 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So what does mountain stand for?
So mountain, M, maximize your reset button. I'll give a brief overview, and then maybe we can dive in. O, own your 3-foot circle. U, unlock your vision. See, I got to spell it out. N, never waste pain. T, tops of trees. A, adversity is fuel. I, incredibly intentional. And N, next aid station. So indirectly, these were all not the takeaways, but all of these were in the game plan going in just various random ways. So M, and this was something, a lot of this was from the basketball court, really. Like, so M, maximize our reset button. There were so many times on the court where you're in this high stress environment. I don't have the ability to go in the locker room and debrief, or like if you're in sales, like, and a call doesn't go well or a meeting, you can like go back to the car or go back to your, like, I've got to figure some stuff out right in front of these people, because there's a good chance in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to have to do this all over again. So for me, and nobody ever realized I was doing this on the court, it was 2 quick inhales and a deep exhale, long exhale, to reset my whole body. And that's what kept bringing me back to the present moment, was just maximizing my reset button. And so I knew that going into this climbing the mountain, like I need something when things get hard, or when I want to quit, or I'm saying this is going to be too tough, like what's going to bring me right back? I'm like, all right, I did this on the court, so maximize my reset button. O, own your 3-foot circle. One of the things I told the guys was like, just imagine you're standing in the middle of a hula hoop, and wherever you go on the mountain, like nobody can say or do anything unless you let them come in. So if you don't let anyone come in, both physically or mentally or verbally, like you own that 3-foot circle. And that was from officiating of, we used to say, like when we missed a call, like stick out your hand literally and figuratively. And if the play is outside your hand, don't blow the whistle. So I don't need to worry about what Chris is doing on the other side of the court if I miss a call. I don't need to worry about what Kiley's doing on the other. Like just own my 3-foot circle. Like just shrink my section of the pie and just get my stuff together, get my stuff right before I start worrying about my other 2 partners. So on the mountain, it was just own your 3-foot circle. Don't say anything negative out loud. You're going to be in pain. We know that going in. So why are we surprised? We know there's going to be adversity. Why are we surprised? Just don't say anything negative out loud. Don't say stupid shit. Don't say I have 6 more to go. You don't have anything. You're choosing to be here. You get to climb 6 more. Little things like that make a big difference, but own your 3-foot circle. You unlock your vision. One of the coolest parts, and they don't really like advertise this, but it's like having a real life dream board. So at the top of the summit, they have this huge wooden board with all the red hats just hanging up there from the time it starts.
Taunting you.
Yeah. And it's like so every time you get up there, you're like, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, there it is. But how often do we not even know what our goals are? We're not looking at it consistently. We don't know where we want to go, right? It's like we haven't even put the address in the GPS. So when we get off track, how do we know where to self-correct? Because we don't even know where we're going. So for me, that was a beautiful reminder. I'm like, man, it's just looking at you in the eyes every single summit. And I'm like, we need to do more of that as a society, of like unlocking our vision, knowing where we're going. We're going to see it every time we get there, and you're going to see it 13 times. So the U, unlock your vision. The N, MOUN, never waste pain. I told the guys, like, there's going to be pain, and we can do one of 2 things with it. We can, woe is me, this is hard, or we can just say, like, no, we're going to use this. We're going to use the adversity. We're going to use the physical pain to know, like, we're putting in the steps. Like, we're putting in the work. We're not cheating this. It's not like we're not riding the gondola up and down. Like, you have to walk up. So there's going to be, again, why are we surprised? Don't be surprised. It's coming, but don't waste it. Don't waste the adversity. Don't waste the pain. Embrace it, endure it, and just know, like, this is what it takes. This is the only ticket to getting a red hat, is by experiencing pain. Like, there was a guy out there in a walking boot. Like, people were like impressed that, like, we finished. I'm like, no. This guy showed up because he was having foot surgery the next week, and he already committed that he was going to do it. And he was like, I don't care if I get 5 or 6 or 2. I said I was going to do it, and I'm coming to do it, and it's not to finish. And, like, to me, it was like, those are the people that, like, were impressive and inspiring. We're like, and there was like one lady who, I mean, we got emotional. She never stopped. She never slept. She tried it the year before and got like 5 or 6, and her goal was to get 7. Not to finish. It was to get 7. And I remember, like, she came down at like 5:57, and all of us are like on the back patio at the base of the, and like, she got standing ovation from like 200 people because she never stopped once. But she set out to do what she did was to not stop and just get one more than she got last year, you know, back to 1% better. So never waste pain, MOUNT. Tops of trees. One of the things that we talked about was like gratitude. And there would be times when we were walking and you're on a mountain, and we would just stop and just look up at the top of the tree and say something you're grateful for, just to yourself or out loud, whatever, just to get us back in the present moment. And because it's not possible to feel two opposite emotions at the same time. So if you're feeling gratitude, you're not going to feel anything else. And I did that on the court. I came up with an acronym, REF, recognize, engage, and focus. So I would use the shot clock as a reset, because I always knew the shot clock was going to be there in every arena I went to. And so on the mountain, I knew, I'm like, what's going to be? I'm like, trees. There's going to be trees everywhere. And so R, recognize, you know, the acronym for REF, R, recognize when stuff's not going well. Like, before you can change anything, you've got to be aware that it's not going well. So miss a call or whatever happens, just recognize that that's the first thing, right? Then 2 was engage. So engage in the shot clock, engage in the trees. And 2, that's going to also, it forces you, the reason I picked a shot clock was it forces you to put your shoulders back. You've always got to look up. So you're physiologically changing your body, right? Because so often our body language droops down, and, you know, we get in our feelings and we're looking down. Well, if you're looking up at a shot clock, you have no other choice but to put your shoulders back in your head. So that's why we use the top of the trees. And then F, focus. Just have something that you're going to say to yourself that's not some bullshit like woo-woo thing. It's like, I can take one more step, right? Yeah. Like, my girls know that now. Like, what can you do? I can take one more step. You're not going to finish, but what can you do right now? I can take one more step. Okay, perfect. Let's do one more step. And so the REF, just a good way to remember in a reset routine, something I still use today, but, you know, the T was the tops of trees. Man, I'm talking a lot. MOUNTA.
Oh, this is fantastic.
Adversity as fuel.
Notes.
Adversity as fuel. So back to the gondola breaking in the lightning storm. Again, why are you surprised? I've said it a lot, but I say it all the time. And like, I told the guys, like, we can either use this adversity to propel us to finish, or we can have a cute little story and have a way to rationalize, which I love Jordan Peterson's quote about rationalizing. It's a self-serving explanation for a low-quality action.
God damn it, I love that.
A self-serving explanation for a low-quality action. I told the guys when we're walking in the lodge at the top, I'm like, we are going to either use this will either sink us or propel us forward. One of the two. And I got to tell you, I would almost go back and find, you know, whoever didn't finish that time. And I guarantee you, they were telling people the reason they didn't finish, well, the gondola broke.
Yeah.
Bullshit. It broke for all 250 people on the mountain. So that doesn't work. You can take that excuse. Yeah, exactly.
That's what I tell myself all the time, getting ready for these events. I'm like, Nationals is coming up, super fucking heavy. But if it's heavy for me, it's heavy for every other competitor.
That's right.
Even playing field, man. Awesome.
Let's do it. Yeah, use it as fuel. So adversity is fuel. Incredibly intentional. So the first thing I asked, they had like this, we get there on Thursday and they have, you know, kickoff and speakers and they have like a lot of coaches. It's a fantastically run event. And the first question I asked were, what are the top 2 reasons that people don't finish? Like, tell me why this is 50%. Number 1, people don't properly hydrate and fuel, because I think this is back when I was wearing a Whoop. I think I burned, don't quote me on this, like 16,000 calories.
I don't doubt it.
In 2 days, like 16 or so. Like, it was something insane. So people aren't sweating, so they don't think they're, and then they don't eat because they're not hungry, and they don't drink, and number two, they have this, and I asked them, and they swear it's not like a ploy, but they have a recovery room there that is unbelievable, like state of the art. They've got a fireplace. They have 3 massage therapists that are there around the clock, and they have 12 reclining chairs with Normatec sleeves. And for those of you who haven't used Normatec sleeves, they're unbelievable. And I asked them, is this here to mentally mess with people? Because they told me the number 2 reason that people don't finish is because they come in the recovery room and they end up spending like 2 or 3 hours and they lose track of time. And it's like Vegas. They don't have a clock in there by design. And I'm like, you guys are just doing this. And they're like, no, like we want to like help people. So I told the 2 guys I was with, if you go in the recovery room, because that's the one thing the business corporate world is so far lagging behind the athletic world, is like they don't prioritize recovery. They don't treat recovery as something that you should be doing. So I told the guys, I'm probably going to go in there 2 or 3 times, but you take your phone and you set the timer for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you can do whatever you want for 15 minutes. And there were sometimes I set the timer and I only got on the table for 2 minutes, and I just started getting stretched because there were other people in line, but I'm like, sorry, the timer went off. I got to go. So if you want to go in there, it's 15 minutes. That's it. It's not 16. It's not 17. It's because I'll be damned if I'm going to lose because I fell asleep in the chair. But that's why people don't finish. They end up going in there for like 3 hours and they just lose track of time. So just being incredibly intentional with everything we did from when we ate. So we would eat, right? We ate 3 meals, but come off the mountain, and we learned our lesson the first time, but eat. And then if you want to go in the recovery room for 15 minutes, so you had 15 minutes to eat and then 15 minutes to go in the recovery room, because we made the mistake. We wanted our food to digest. We made the mistake the first time of just eating and going back up. Oh, and it was like middle of the day. It was like 90 degrees. Oh, it was brutal. That was the worst, probably the worst climb. So just be intentional with everything you do, from changing clothes, from eating, from hydrating, from visiting the recovery room, whatever you do, just be intentional with it. And then the last one, the next aid station. So I broke it down for him. I'm like, look, I got this from a buddy of mine that's a Navy SEAL. There's a aid station at the bottom on the base. There's one about 3/4 of a mile up. Then there's another one about another half a mile or a mile up, and then one at the top. So I said, as soon as we toe the start line, cross that one off. So we have to do 13 summits. You get 4 aid stations per summit. So you got to do 52, right? We don't have to climb it 13 times. We just have to make it to the next aid station. Yep. And sometimes it wasn't even to the next aid. It was like, you see that tree right there that's like 20 yards? Just make it to that, and then we'll figure this out from there. But our whole motto was next aid station. So as soon as we got to an aid station, next aid station, next aid station. So I'm like, they're giving the first one away. Like, we're all going to the starting line. So we have 51 more to go. Not 13 summits. We don't have to worry about 30. Just make it to the next aid station. And there, like I said, there was a lot of times we broke it down even shorter distances, because it was like, it's a mental fatigue out there. So MOUNTAIN, that's what allowed us to get through. Those are the 8.
Would you do it again?
No, just because I need what's next, right? And I would say, like, if my wife wanted to go, or my girls wanted to go in the future, or a friend, I would go. I wouldn't go just myself, because I've not like, I've already figured out, because they go all over the country. Yeah. And so, like, there's one where it's like 19 summits, but it's only a mile and a half. There's some where it's like just 4 summits and it's like a 4-mile track. Okay. So that, there's different variations of it, but I'm just kind of like with the phone thing, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. Like, I'm just looking for the next thing, and not that I'm better than it, but I would only go if like someone asked me or wanted me to go with them as a guide. But there's some people, like, I met a guy there, he had done it like 9 or 10 times. He just goes like to new locations, which if that's your jam, awesome. But I just like, what's the next thing I can do? I want to just see as many. It's like, kind of like vacations, like, awesome that people have vacation homes, but I just want to go see as many places as possible. Yeah. I just don't want to keep going back to the same place.
Yeah. That's
and
cool.
There's something spiritual about the new adventure.
100%.
Yeah.
The unknown.
Yeah, conquering the unknown. So go back to old Jordan Peterson, the biggest dragon concept. Pick the biggest dragon, fight the biggest dragon. You become the best warrior. You don't become a better warrior fighting a tiny dragon.
That's right.
So, yeah.
And I would kind of know, just doing those 36 hours, like kind of what to expect and what places, which would kind of take the mystery out of it, the unknown. I mean, it would, don't get me wrong, that mountain will present its own challenges. You don't need to go. It's kind of like life. You don't need to go seeking it out. Like, it's coming at some point. But yeah, I would just look for something new, some new adventure.
So you mentioned that we as a society struggle with recovery, and I totally agree with you, but I'm curious to know, in your coaching experience, what are some of the main struggles that you see on a recurring basis with the execs, the leaders that you coach? What are they struggling with, and what kind of impact is that having?
A couple things that come to mind. I'd say one, there's no practice in whatever they do. Not just sales, just no real preparation or practice into whatever they're doing. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. The second one, they don't know how to handle stress. They don't probably even realize or understand the difference between good stress and bad stress. So I would say that's the second. And then the third, like prioritizing recovery. And then actually, I don't know if they're in any particular order, but a fourth one that is not having boundaries. Not having non-negotiables. Like amazing, like I'm fortunate to work with like you and Chris, like some really successful people, and yet they don't have non-negotiables. They don't have a definition of what success is. They don't have boundaries set up. Their default answer is not no. It's always just yes, yes, yes. So I would say that those are the stress, the prioritizing recovery, the boundaries, and then practice, whatever practice might look like for their specific field.
I think you're spot on. So I'm curious, Tommy, how do you handle stress? Because we're not exempt as coaches from stress.
Man, good question. I think a lot of it comes down to preparation. There's a couple things, I think 17 actually, oddly enough, like when I started my business, like these were going to be non-negotiables because stress is going to come, but are you increasing the chance of it happening, or are you decreasing the odds that it's going to happen? Because it's going to happen. So like one of the things just from a preparation, like I don't have back-to-back meetings, like non-negotiable. I think a lot of times like we create stress unintentionally maybe, but from a timing standpoint or just rushing around. So we were kind of talking before we hit record, like I was here an hour before today just because I knew I'll get here and then I can work here, right? But I'm not going to like work up until 20 minutes and then race over here. And now I'm rushed and now I'm stressed out and I'm trying to talk to you guys. And it's like, well, I can control that. Like, let me control what I can control. And too often we worry about the stuff we don't control, and then we don't change anything about the things that we can control. And so for me, it's just, hey, what practices am I regularly going to do, whether it's meditating, whether it's a cold shower, prayer, just sitting in silence, journaling, like, am I actively doing those things every day to regulate stress? Am I seeking out good stress to help myself? Or am I always just putting myself in situations where the bad stress is going to, little things like driving, like I'm not going to allow someone else who cuts me off to ruin my day. Like, I'm not going to allow that. Like, I'm not going to allow some idiot to call, like, who has no control. I don't know what he's going through, but I'm not going to let that mess up my day. But I think too often we're not prepared and we don't plan for things, and then our schedule's jam-packed and we don't have any time to debrief, and then we wonder why we're stressed. Well, you're creating a lot of that by yourself. Like, you're adding to a lot of the stress. And I think one of the big things it comes down to is, and it's one of the first things I did in coaching and, consulting now, and I talk about sometimes in speaking, is like, I do this exercise and it's so simple, but everyone always seems like, oh my gosh, that's eye-opening. But it's like, all right, let's write down everything on the left side of the paper that you don't control, right? And there's,
we do this too.
Yeah, there's probably like 20 things that you could list. And now what do you control? And I say there's 3 things that you control, and it's ACE: your attitude, your confidence, and your effort. And to me, confidence is nothing more than your body language, your preparation, and your self-talk. Doesn't have anything to do with prior success. Doesn't have anything to do with experience. Doesn't have anything to do with how long you've been in doing whatever you're doing. And so, but most of the times when we complain about something, we're complaining about something that's on the left-hand side of the column about don't control. And so when I'm talking to leaders, I'm like, when your team comes to you, are they coming to you and saying like, hey, I just want to let you know my attitude sucked the last week? Right? No, they're complaining about something that they have no control over. And that's where 99% of our stress is, about things we don't control. So I carry an ace of diamond in my wallet. I've got one at home, and I'm just looking at that because you got to go through some stuff to make a diamond, right? So I'm always looking at that of like, if I start worrying, if I start complaining, I just look at the ace and I'm like, all right, is this my attitude, my confidence, or effort? If not, see ya. I don't worry about it. Because I got too many other things I can control that I need to worry about before I start worrying about speaking engagements or my kids. Like I can influence those things, but I don't control it. And my definition of control is, can you change it in an instant? And if you aren't able to control it in an instant or change it in an instant, you don't control it.
So controlled variables versus uncontrolled variables.
That's right.
Uncontrolled variables is the asshole in the car.
That's right.
But making your bed, doing the laundry, taking care of things that will snowball into oblivion and bury you, you have control over.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, even stuff like my car accident, right? I say this loosely because there are things that you can do to control safety on the road, right?
Your effort.
But like, I didn't wake up that day thinking, you know what, I'm going to get into a wreck today.
Yeah.
Right? That wasn't something that I planned or I had prepared for. It was seemingly an uncontrollable variable. I couldn't control the guy that cut off the semi that I hit. But now, looking back at that situation, the things I do have control over are how closely I follow other cars. If I see somebody driving like a jackass around me, I give myself plenty of space around them. I'm not even going to try to compete with somebody that is being aggressive on the road. So there are things that we can do to, like you said, Tommy, cut back on the surprises that we encounter on a regular basis. There are things we can do to slow down. And I think and part of it is, like, you think about if you're already running late, you're going to have a tendency to cut somebody else off on the road because you're in a panic and you're making bad decisions because you're frantic. And so I think we do have a problem as society that we're in such a hurry all the time. And if we just slowed down a little bit, we'd be able to think a little bit more intentionally and work smarter instead of harder at everything we're doing.
But I think it makes people feel less productive because people confuse the busy and productive. If I'm not busy running around like a chicken with my head cut off, if I'm not Wolf of Wall Street calling 900 fucking people a day, I'm not going to kill it. I'm not going to make it. It's like, what? It's just ridiculous. There's a point of, what is it called? Diminishing returns. I mean, I find that all the time in the gym. I mean, right now I'm on a 3-day split. 3-day split is tiny for me. I fucking love it because I've found a new level, but the new level requires a new set of stimulus. So these people run around all the time, spending all this energy, but not going anywhere. So productivity requires generally less activity. But we're assuming that less activity equals less productivity.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because, I mean, half the problems that people come to me with, I don't respond to emails like instantly. I don't usually even respond to emails same day. A lot of times I'll get an email and I'll respond the next day after I've kind of like taken it in my inventory and prioritized accordingly. Somebody once said, and I think it's the greatest way of looking at it, your email inbox is a list of everybody else's priorities.
I like that.
Yeah. And here we are dropping everything we are doing, everything that we need to prioritize to respond to somebody else's priority.
Yeah, it's just like the being distracted by like the next thing and not just doing one thing at a time. I do this exercise sometimes in speaking. I've got this picture my 4-year-old picked out. It's Elmo from her Elmo book. And there's all these different colors and characters, and I'll tell them, all right, I'm going to put a picture up there, and I want you to find everything red in the picture. Okay? And I'm only going to have it up for 5 seconds. Just kind of inventory for yourself in your mind, everything red. Okay? Got it? All right. So I put it up for 5 seconds and, looking, call it down. And I'm like, all right, shout it out. Tell me everything you saw that's red, right? You get 100 answers. After that, okay, tell me everything you saw that's blue. There's like crickets.
Yeah, you're not looking for it.
Bingo. But how many times are we trying to do the red thing and the blue thing and the green thing, and we start writing or doing something, and then we got to check an email, and then we got to make a phone. It's like, just do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
This what's the word I'm looking for?
Multitasking.
Yeah, that's the biggest lie there is in productivity. Like, there's no such thing as multitasking. If you're doing 2 things at once, you're not doing anything. So just do one thing.
Multiple things really shitty.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. They're just half-assing it, You can't climb the mountain and write a book at the same time, but you can climb the mountain and come home and write a book.
There you go.
And do both well.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, but there are certain tasks that you can multitask. And if some of those tasks are routine tasks that don't require your conscious effort, like you can listen to music and fold laundry at the same time. No problem. Both of those can happen automatically without your conscious effort being involved. But the second, and you can even fold laundry and watch TV at the same time. You consciously have to pay attention to the TV to follow along in the story, but you don't have to be super focused to fold laundry unless you're Chris. Chris is a perfectionist with the clothes, the laundry folding.
You just have to fold it correctly.
That's right.
There's no point in doing it half-assed.
Yeah, but you can't respond to an email and talk on the phone at the same time and do both of those tasks well. So, yeah, I think we're in this hustle culture where everybody is trying to do all the things, and like our worth is determined by our level of busyness. And honestly, I look at the people who are making really good money and seemingly doing it effortlessly. Like, to me, those are the people that I want to emulate, because it's like they're doing it without the stress. They're doing it without the panic. And, you know, I'm sure they probably experience adversity like the rest of us, but they're not getting worked up about it. They're going through it very intentionally each day, and they haven't overscheduled themselves. They aren't spread too thin. They're not half-assing everything they do because they've got too many priorities. You know, those are the people that I think are admirable.
Well, those are the ones that have figured it out. I mean, you're never not going to be faced with adversity. Like you said, don't be surprised. Life's going to kick you in the dick every now and then. That just happens. Mm-hmm. But when it happens, don't let it just throw you for a loop and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened, and dwell on it for 6 months. Shit happens, man. Move on. It's a part of life. In fact, it's the best part of life, because if you don't have adversity, you don't know what awesome is. You have to have the bottom third in order to experience the top third. So that's why I think, like you, falling in love with the hard things is because it makes everything else so much better when you experience the adversity. And the adversity of choosing to be there, to choose the adversity and put yourself through it willingly, is a whole different kind of monster. I mean, it is like a baptism of fire. That is the most glorious thing you'll ever go through. But I forgot what we were talking about. I just got off rail there.
Responding to adversity. I heard Billy Donovan, who's the coach of the Bulls now, give a great example. He's like, a player one time went 2 for 11 in a game. So he missed 9 shots. And he asked the player, okay, how many minutes did you play? And I want to say he played, let's call it 30 minutes out of a 40-minute game. I think this was when he was coaching college. He was like, how long does it take to take a shot? And he was like, 2 seconds. He's like, all right, so 9 missed shots, 18 seconds. I'm paraphrasing the numbers, but he's like, all right, you let 18 seconds affect 36 minutes of the game.
It's bonkers.
Right? Like my last year, when I knew like this was probably going to be my last year, I would just go up to players and I'm like your body language, especially if they're the star, like your body language is affecting the rest of your team. You don't even realize it. I've always said, like, and I used to say to some of the coaches, you've got 19 assistant coaches over there who God knows what they're doing. I would have one, like, honestly, if I was a head coach, I would have one coach sitting next to me and he would be the body language coach. And as soon as someone had shitty body language, he's coming out, whether it's the star or it's the 7th man, doesn't matter, because that not only is it affecting you and your teammates, it's now giving confidence to the other team. Well, look, we just went on a 7-0 run and look at the other team. They're all putting their head down and pouting and moping. Yep. Like that's affecting, like I've got 3 rules in my house. Number 1, don't disrespect your mom. Number 2, you're not allowed to say can't. You can cuss as much as you want. As soon as I hear can't, I'm coming from the other room. Don't say can't. And number 3, no pouting, no victim mentality. Those are my only 3 rules. You do whatever else you want, but don't disrespect your mom. Don't say can't, and don't have bad body language. Don't pout. Don't mope. Don't no complaining. Like, we're going to figure this out together. Right. But it's like so often you just see the body language. They're just like, they go on like a 5-0 run and like they're walking down the court like someone just died. Like, dude, you can go on a 15-0 run right now, but we just allow these little things to just mess up the rest of the game or the rest of the day.
Well, to go back to the namesake of your business, the body language is just a reflection of their thoughts and their thinking, right? Think Better, Perform Better.
Yeah.
Is the name of Tommy's company. So what you're really saying is change your thoughts.
Yep.
Because your body language is telling me your thoughts suck right now.
Amen.
Well, just look at the power of the human, though. You know, the power of your thoughts affect everything. They affect the entire stadium, everybody in it. You start moping around, pulling your shoulders together, looking like the worst thing in the world. Someone just stole your cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are going to affect everybody. The human system and body is so fucking powerful that the energy levels that coming from your thoughts affect everything.
Well, it's the attitude, confidence, and effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Anytime I speak to a sports team, you know, I'll ask them, like, what would you guys think if you played a team and despite what happened, like their body language never changed? Like they just had neutral body language. They got happy sometimes, but they never got pissed off or sad. They just stayed neutral or they were really excited. Like, what would that do to you guys if you played a team like, well, that'd be demoralizing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It doesn't look like you're winning.
Right.
Nothing affects them.
Right.
Yes.
They're just stone cold killers. And I'm like, well, what prevents you from being that team?
This reminds me of Rocky IV. When Ivan Drago's wailing on him, he goes, the guy's made of metal.
Yeah.
Because he just showed no emotions.
Yeah.
Just let this dude wail on him, and he just kept coming back for more.
It's demoralizing.
Yeah.
When you're like giving it your best shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're giving your best shot, and the other guys or gal or whoever, the other team, is not phased. Like, that is so demoralizing. One, because you never see it. But two, you're like, I'm giving it all I have, and they're not, this isn't affecting them. Well, I don't have anything else to give them.
Yeah.
It completely like turns the tide.
Yeah. My favorite is to compete and smile at people.
Yeah.
You know, even if I know they're going to beat me, I'm like, I'm coming for you, bud. Like, this is going to be good.
Well, and too, because it's like, people are like, there's something wrong with this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, he's smiling right now.
Oh, yeah.
There's something clearly wrong with this guy, but it affects people. It does. In your favor, it can.
All right, Tommy. How can people get in touch with you?
My website, tommyshort.com. And if you want to send an email or get a hold of me, you can find me on there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I took copious notes while you were talking.
Thank you guys for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Redefining Resilience.
To learn more about building your mental and physical readiness, check out odysseyresilience.org.
And follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.